Absolutely. Now, lest we enter into an echo chamber and continue to beat up the weakest arguments of atheism, because we would all agree that those are pretty weak arguments, and those may be the strongest of those 9 out of 10 people. But what about you call them the serious atheists? Well, what's the conversations you start to have with them?
So
because the rest of them, you get to this point where you can't really go anywhere. But with these individuals,
so there's two forms of atheism that I think are the most serious, and I would say, and one of them isn't actually that serious because I think it falls apart. The most serious atheism is like Friedrich Nietzsche. Okay. He just recognizes this and says, yeah, it's all arbitrary. It's all just power and it is what it is. And the thing is that no one like lives that way, but at least he has a consistent argument. You know what I mean? Like it is consistent, like rationally, even if you don't live that way, which you can say, well, there's an inconsistency if you don't live like, do you really believe it if you don't
people
live it out?
Believe how they act. Right.
Yes. Now, on the other hand, there is the argument that can be made. The Sam Harris is probably the most popular, the popularizer of the atheistic objective, trying to provide an objective basis to morality. And Daniel, I want you to kind of respond to this, but I'm going to kind of play devil's advocate here because I'm actually a big fan of Sam's work, and I think he actually he gets the closest. Okay. He says that when we talk about good and bad, right? Like those are linguistic concepts that we're using, right? We're describing something. What are we describing? His thing is what is being described is the well-being of a conscious creature. So we say that if something increases something's well-being, the well-being of a conscious creature, that we use the word good. That's what we mean by it. And if we say something is bad in the degree to which it is the conscious creature is suffering. So I put it this way. If you have a spectrum, if suffering is in one direction and then in the other direction is, let's call it well-being. Let's just call it the opposite of suffering, like going the other way. Prospering, thriving, whatever you want to do. And we say our morality is a description of the way certain behaviors affect either movement towards suffering or movement toward well-being. And he says that is what we are describing when we use this language.
Yeah, I would say first, why well-being? Why not suffering? Why not hurt people? Why not live in a world where you can, by your power and dominance, take advantage of people? Why not?
So his thing is now I think you're hitting it where I think he's blind. But what I would say is that yes, that is what the moral language describes, but you're right. His morality falls short because in that objective world, he's talking about well-being in the abstract, where you experience well-being. And so the good for you is your well-being, right?
Yeah.
That's what the language is actually describing, is your well-being. Now, watching your children, for instance, prosper might bring you well-being. But you know what else? Enslaving my neighbor might bring me well-being, might make me happier.
What's good for you might be bad for someone else. So how do you deal with that contradiction?
Exactly. So where I actually think that a Christian worldview actually solves the problem, because I think he's right. I actually do believe that what moral language describes is good, is the nature of well-being, is the nature of something's relationship to suffering. Okay. And what we call good is that which leads us away from suffering. Even, and Daniel, you might disagree with this. This is where I think we may have a little bit of a disconnect here, but would I call God good if he did nothing but, if he caused me endless misery and suffering eternally? Would he be good, or would he be the devil? I call God good because God can provide, it can save me from suffering. If God was the, like, literally he just made me suffer and made me suffer forever and made everyone suffer forever, why would we ever use the word good to describe God? Right? The reason we use the word good or bad in a moral sense is to describe something relationship to suffering. And because we believe that God provides us with the ability to have actual joy and happiness, that's why we call him good.
Sure. Yeah. So someone being suffocated by another human being and basically tortured, I mean, most people would say it's a bad thing. But when we look at the instance of the cross, I say that's a good thing.
But it's only a good thing because it wouldn't have been a good thing if it was just he died on the cross and that was it, and no one was saved. And not only that, his dying on the cross meant that we're all going to die on crosses and suffer eternally the same fate as Jesus.
Well,
like, I wouldn't call that a good thing, right? So all I'm saying is the language that's being used there is this, but here's what's crazy. You and I know that there's an ultimate justice and that our well-being, we will suffer if we harm our fellow man and break God's laws and do terrible things, that suffering will result from that. And so it's sort of like you can, in an atheist world, you actually can get away with it, right? In our world, you can never get away with it. And what do we mean by that, to get away with it? We mean that your well-being is connected with everyone else's. And if you do wrong by others or by God, that your well-being will be affected. And so watch out, because you can't get away with anything.
Sure. Well,
and that becomes the basis of a moral system that we say, don't do these bad things. And here's why you shouldn't do them, is because if you do, you will suffer. And we all assume that people don't want to suffer.
To harm others is to harm yourself in a Christian world.
Bingo. And in the atheist world, not always. They'll try and say like, yeah, you know, but it's sort of like, no, dude, they have to make the assumption that you never can get away with anything in the world. And that's just not the case.
Right.
Like you can get away with stuff. Like people did get away with stuff. If you enjoyed this video, give it a like and hit the subscribe button. Also, if you want more content, including the podcast, go to thoughtful-faith.com. Thanks for watching.